God, we just come before you. We just pause to say that you are God, you are King, you are Creator, you are Rescuer. And so by pausing, we just acknowledge that. Meet us, Father, where we're at. It's in your name that we pray. Amen. Hey, real quick, if you were with us yesterday, we were at Founders Park and the Preserve. And so we had a huge community air show party. And just wanted to celebrate it and honestly just say to everyone here who helped out, thank you so, so much. There were so many people who cooked food, who prepped, who picked up trash, who set up games. And we haven't kind of figured out the official numbers yet, but we think somewhere probably around 300 to 350 people came through. And so just thank you so much. I have had neighbors and people in the Preserve already Facebook messaged me last night and this morning, and honestly, they were highly impressed. So it was kind of one of those cool moments just to stand back and say, wow, like I'm really proud of the bridge. So thank you guys. Thank you so much. And we are looking forward to doing more things like that in the future as we get closer to our property. Switching gears, as Rachel mentioned during announcements, we are in this series called The Art of Neighboring, which is kind of accompanied by this book that two pastors wrote. And I just wanted to quote them real quick in the very beginning. This is how they start off their book. They ask this: what if the solution to society's biggest problems is actually been right under our nose for the last 2,000 years? When Jesus was asked 2,000 years ago to sum up the whole Bible, to reduce the Old and the New Testament down to like one saying, he said this: love God with everything you have and love your neighbor as yourself. And kind of the interesting thing about that is we know that, but what if Jesus actually literally meant that? Like to actually love our physical neighbors. And so these two authors, what they did this in 2009, so it was about 10 years ago. They gathered 20 pastors together outside of the Denver area, and they just wanted to come together and say, hey, we have so many hopes and dreams and prayers for the Denver area, our communities, and we just want to get together to see what God wants us to do, to think strategically as well as to pray. And so what they did is they actually brought in their local mayor. And so the mayor of this area in Denver came in, and they asked him, they said, hey, you know the city, you know the community. We want to bless this area. We want to serve this area. You tell us what we should do. Here's what he said: the majority of the issues that our community is facing would be eliminated or drastically reduced if we could just figure out a way to become a community of great neighbors. That's what the mayor said. And then he went on and said, hey, a lot of people think we just need some government funding. We just need some local city or state or federal programs and funds, and that'll fix all of our problems in the area, right? So, at-risk youth or elderly shut-ins. The city just needs to develop a program. There needs to be some government funding, and that'll take care of all the issues. He said, that's what most people think. And so the problem with that is that never works because it's not a long-term solution. Why? Well, either funding and money is going to run out, or for whatever reason, maybe because of funding, the program is going to stop. And so once the program stops, once the funding stops, the problem comes right back. It is not a long-term solution. Here's what he said. I love this little phrase. He said that a good neighbor always beats a good program. That comes from a city official. A good neighbor always beats a good program. We're going to come back to that. So this author, he talks about, he's a pastor, so he leaves this meeting, he's driving home, he's reflecting, and he's like, man, am I the only one that's actually really embarrassed about this? That here we are, a group of pastors, a group of followers of Jesus, asking the mayor, hey, can you tell us how we can best serve and bless this city? And basically what the mayor says, yeah, hey, it'd be great if you could just get your people to obey the second half of the greatest commandment that Jesus gives. Basically, the mayor said, hey, all you need to do is just obey Jesus. Government leaders have also noticed a couple other things from studies. Here they are. The crime rate in a neighborhood will go down 60% if most of their neighbors know their names, each other. People who have close bonds with their neighbors statistically live longer. When natural disasters strike, the first responders are actually your neighbors. I mean, I think about this even in the preserve. Some of you know this. There was a fatality, a car accident. The family happens to live about 8 or 9 houses down from us. I mean, tragic situation. 4 children. The father, I think, was late 30s, early 40s. Just gone like that. And the preserve has started a GoFundMe, and they have food at their doorstep every meal. It's just been amazing to watch a small community come together because of their neighbors. That's what neighboring is about. Here's the last one. And this one's going to sting. This one's going to hurt us a little bit. Government officials have said this. There is not a noticeable difference of how Christians and non-Christians neighbor in their community. Think about that. Government officials have said, you know what? We honestly, it's like they take out a map and like, okay, here are the Christians, here are the non-Christians, and let's see which one's more. They said, there's no difference. That hurts. The church just needs to own up and say, yeah, we haven't done much better. Now that's bad news. The good news, the answer always goes back to Jesus, right? So they teach you in Sunday school. So you have Jesus 2,000 years ago, I mean, just the most brilliant and smart human being who's ever lived. And Jesus comes up with this very simple but strategic command to love God with everything we have and to love our neighbor. And if we would just follow that. So we're going to turn to Luke chapter 10. This is a story of Jesus. If you know anything about Jesus didn't really talk in kind of like mathematical formulas. Jesus answered everything with a great story. And so as we're going to see here, there's a discussion going on about neighboring. And so Jesus tells a story about good neighboring. And most of us here, especially if you grew up in the church, you know this story. And so I think there's a temptation here. Oh, I know this. Oh, I've heard this before. And I would say, I think that's actually why we've grown numb to neighboring. Because we hear it all the time. We know this story. Jesus is going to answer for us in this story. What does it mean to be a neighbor? So Luke chapter 10, let's dig in. Verse 25. It is called, most Bibles will label it the parable of the Good Samaritan. Luke 10, 25, here we go. On one occasion, an expert in the law, that just means this is a Jewish lawyer who's got all the rules down. And he stood up to test Jesus. Never a smart thing to do. Teacher, he asked, what must I do to inherit eternal life? Just kind of casual, everyday, questions. Hey, what must I do to inherit eternal life? Verse 26. Jesus tells him, well, what's written in the law? How do you read it? And he answered, well, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus says, you have answered correctly. Do this and you will live. But he wanted to justify himself And so he asked Jesus, "Who is my neighbor?" Let's stop there. The punchline there is he wanted to justify himself. Here's what this lawyer is wanting to do. He intentionally asks Jesus, "Who is my neighbor?" Because he's wanting Jesus to give a certain definition of who your neighbor is that will make him faultless, that will remove guilt, that will not make him blameworthy. Culturally speaking, this lawyer would have expected Jesus to say this: "Hey, your neighbor is just your fellow Israelite. Hey, your neighbor is your family. Basically, your neighbor is, well, the people who are just like you." And what's interesting is that you can tell that by the very fact that he asked this question is that he's assuming that there are people who are not his neighbor. Why else do you ask, "Who is my neighbor?" And so it would have been comfortable for this lawyer if Jesus would have said, "Hey, yeah, your neighbor is someone who has the same faith as you, someone who lives next to you, is in the same working class, is your family, a relative," and he would have been completely okay and comfortable with that. But here's the point. He is trying to find a loophole, this lawyer. He's trying to find a loophole in Jesus's argument. Because he, the lawyer, he doesn't want to care for someone who's not like him. That's what's going on. He's trying to find a loophole. Now, of course, we never try to find loopholes today. People never try to do that in their taxes, a bunch of other stuff. So how does Jesus respond? He tells a story. Here's what Jesus is going to do. Jesus expands his definition of your neighbor. He's going to say, "Hey, it's not just the people who are like you. Everyone is your neighbor." Here's the story, verse 30. In reply, Jesus said this: "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him down of his clothes, they beat him, and they went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, he came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. And he went to him and he bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. And he put the man on his own donkey. He brought him to an inn and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and he gave them to the innkeeper. 'Look after him,' he said, 'and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have.'" Jesus, as clever as he is, which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? And the expert in the law replied, and he doesn't even want to call him a Samaritan. He says, "The one who had mercy on him." And Jesus told him, "Go and do likewise." A lot of us have heard this story before. If you haven't, if you're new to church, here's the gist of it. There's a man going down from Jerusalem to Jericho. It's a 17-mile journey. Now, this isn't any 17-mile journey. It's actually a really dangerous, rough, and sketchy path to take. It's just like, hey, we all know like the neighborhoods where, hey, yeah, don't go there by yourself. Don't drive through there at night. There's robbers, everything. This is that journey. You shouldn't go down it. He does. He gets robbed. He's beaten badly. He's left to die. And here's what happens. This is the punchline of the story. The top 2 religious classes, a priest and a Levite, like the most holy people, so to speak, who are known and who pride themselves in doing good, they each walk by him and don't stop to care for him. But a Samaritan, here's what you got to know about Samaritans and Israelites. They hated each other. Samaritans hated Israelites. Israelites hated Samaritans. And so this Samaritan guy, he's walking down, he sees him on the side of the road, and the passage says that he takes pity on him. I mean, to make this so clear to you, here's how crazy this is. It'd be like if you were walking down Philadelphia or whatever, and somehow that you identified someone on the side of the road that was from like ISIS or Al-Qaeda, and you stopped and you helped him. That's how crazy this is. And he doesn't just stop and help him. Oil, wine, bandages. He takes him back to an inn, which is the equivalent of a hospital in that culture. And he doesn't just drop him off. He tells, hey, take care of this guy. I'm paying all the medical expenses. It's all covered. Please treat him, take care of him. Here's Jesus' point. The Samaritan was the true neighbor. And so he tells this lawyer, go and do likewise. Jesus says, your neighbor is anybody that you come into contact with that's in need. That is who your neighbor is. Your neighbors aren't the people who are just like you, right? Your family, your friends, people from church, people of the same faith. Now, here's what's interesting about this. Once we understand this, and I think this is the right perspective to take of this passage, I think a lot of us will do this. Okay, so, when I go to an Angel game, the person sitting next to me, okay, they're my neighbors, supposedly, as Jesus says, so I need to love and care them. Hey, when I go to Starbucks, I interact with the barista. Hey, they're my neighbor. I need to care for them. Hey, when I'm in the checkout line at Stater Brothers or Trader Joe's and I interact with someone, okay, well, that's my neighbor. I need to love and take care of them. And let me be clear, that is all 100% completely true, and that is just completely derived from this passage. So that's true. However, that doesn't lessen the fact that all of us here have actual physical, literal neighbors. Because here's what I want to get into this morning. I think actually a lot of us in here are just like this lawyer. I know I am. And I'm trying to find a loophole in the system. And maybe I'm doing this I'm not even aware of it. But I'm trying to find a loophole in that, whoa, hold on. I need to actually love and care for my physical, literal neighbor? No, everyone's my neighbor. So just anyone I come into contact, that's who I need to love on, but not actually my physical, literal neighbor. Our question for us this morning is this: who is your neighbor? This lawyer wanted to define who qualified as his neighbor and looking for a loophole, and he was missing the whole reason Jesus was teaching. Now here's the problem. There's this little quote. When everyone is your neighbor, no one is your neighbor. Okay? When everyone is your neighbor, no one is your neighbor. When Jesus, here's the thing we have to keep into account of understanding this passage. When Jesus told this story, this lawyer had physical, literal neighbors, and it was already assumed that he would love and care for them. Why? Because they were just like him. You lived in the same kind of working class. He would have lived with his family. That culture back then, the whole family lived together. So his neighbors would have been his family, his relatives. It would have been fellow Israelites. It would have been people in the same economic class. And so he already loved his literal neighbors. Jesus didn't have to teach him that. He was already doing that. What Jesus was challenging him to do was to be a good neighbor to those who aren't like him. That was the issue there. And so the point of his story is that love someone who you hate, who isn't like you. I think for us in 2019, it's the opposite. I don't know about you, but at least for me, it is actually way easier for me, and this is just me, maybe you're different. It's actually way easier for me to love on and care for someone, just like a random stranger. So it's easy for me to go strike up conversation with the barista at Starbucks. Yesterday, met a bunch of new people. I had a blast just talking to them, loving on them. Hey, how can we help you? All this other kind of stuff. If I go to an Angel game, I'll talk to someone right next to me. Now, some of you may not be like that, but at least for me, that's easy to do. What's hard for me to do? To actually love my literal physical neighbor. Why? Because that requires vulnerability. That requires time. That requires energy. I'm opening up the box to like, ooh, when I get home and I check the mail and I have a neighbor outside, oh, I'm actually going to have to talk to them, but I'm tired, I'm busy. Ooh, they may end up coming into our house and coming over and wanting to play with our son. See, it's actually far riskier to be a good literal neighbor because it takes time, energy, vulnerability. It requires more effort. The Art of Neighboring, this book that is accompanying this series, here's what those authors say. I think this is brilliant. We'll put it up on the screens. They say, today as we read the parable, we go straight for loving the neighbor on the side of the road. Thus, we make a metaphor of the neighbors, a metaphor that doesn't include the person who lives next door to us. If we don't take Jesus' command literally, then we turn the great commandment into nothing more than just a metaphor. We have metaphoric love for our metaphoric neighbors, and our communities are changed, but only metaphorically, of course. In other words, nothing changes. So in addition to thinking of our neighbor metaphorically, as did the Good Samaritan, we need to apply Jesus' teaching to our literal neighbors, real people with real names, phone numbers, and addresses. I mean, I don't know about you, but some is just the way the preserve is built. When I open my front door, literally, there is my neighbor's front door, 20, 25 feet away. I realize that's all of us don't have houses like that. But I have neighbors who live literally across the door from me who have real issues and hurts and longings and cravings. Oh, but I'm just supposed to metaphorically love my neighbor, and so I don't need to love on them. When you try to love everyone, you end up actually loving no one. And the end result is that we actually do very little. Famous poet Wendell Berry says this. This is good. Love your neighbor, not the neighbors you pick out, but the ones you have. Love your neighbor, not the ones you pick out, but the ones you have. The reality is this, 2019, we are busy, our schedules are filled. We can only do a couple things well. My hope and prayer is that one of the things we do well is something that Jesus said matters the most. Let me say a couple things. One, I've been fired up over this topic the last 2 weeks. I'm personally passionate about this. I think this is actually the key to spreading the kingdom. That's a whole other discussion. But one thing that I've wrestled with as I'm thinking through this the last 2 weeks is that if I'm honest, I find myself with a ulterior motive. Oh, I want to love my neighbor because I want them to become a follower of Jesus. Now that may sound like a weird thing to say because that's completely a positive thing. Let me hear you loud and clear. I hope all of our neighbors become followers of Jesus. Let's pray for revival. Let's do it. Here's the issue though. Does Jesus tell us to love our neighbor only if they become a Christian? Or does he just say, love your neighbor? Another book I've been reading called The Neighboring Church, they say this, you'll get the point. We love our neighbors because we are Christians, not because we're trying to make them Christians. Say it one more time. We love our neighbors because we are Christians, not because we're trying to make them Christians. Now, if they become Christians, is that great and hallelujah? Of course, amen. So let me be clear on that. But we can't view our neighbors as kind of some conversion project where we have this agenda behind us. People can sniff that out. Right? We've all had encounters like that with people. They ask this super convicting question. They say, would you be willing to love your neighbor if you knew they wouldn't ever give their life to God? That's the litmus test. If you go in thinking this is an evangelism strategy only, it won't work. See, we're to love our neighbor because Jesus tells us to. He doesn't say, oh, only love them if they come to church. We love our neighbor out of obedience and response to Jesus Christ. One other thing. Loving your neighbor is not just some other government initiative. Furthermore, it's not just some extra church program. Churches in America are great at developing the latest and greatest program. Oh, we have a problem. Let's develop this program for this. The art of neighboring is not another program. It's a lifestyle to live. Two pastors, I was listening to something this past week. This will rattle us. They said this: programs are what we create when Christians are not doing what they're supposed to do in everyday life. Maybe that one more time. Programs are what the church creates when Christians are not doing what they're supposed to do in their everyday life. Talk about a ministry paradigm shift. Remember, good neighboring will always beat a good program. I've said this the last 2 months, and I've said it in kind of a different wordage. Here's another way of putting it. As we move to Pine, even if we actually weren't moving to Pine, I think this is a question that the bridge needs to wrestle with. If the bridge disappeared tomorrow, for whatever reason, just disappeared, would anybody notice? If the bridge ceased to exist tomorrow, would anybody in Chino Hills, Ontario, whatever, would they even notice? And then you can take this a step further and zero it in on your family and your neighborhood. If you moved tomorrow, U-Haul comes, loaded up, gone, would anybody notice? Now, I'm not asking would they notice because they see the U-Haul and the boxes going outside of your house. I'm saying, would they notice because, oh my gosh, the breezes are gone and they do so much for this neighborhood and they love on us, they bless us. What are we going to do without them? That is a fascinating question to ask. In other words, are we doing what Jesus said matters most? Are we loving our literal neighbors? Now, what's the practical side to this? I'm convinced you cannot love someone well if you don't know their name. Really basic. What do I mean? Yeah, I'm so guilty of this, so I apologize ahead of time. You know when you meet someone new for the first time, you get their name, and then you meet them a week later or at a business meeting or whatever, and you don't remember their name, right? And I don't know about you, but I think it's easier for guys because we can do the whole kind of hey, dude, hey, man. And you just kind of substitute whatever phrase because you don't remember their name. And you can be super friendly. Hey, man, it's so good to see you. High five. And really all that is, you don't remember their name. But it's a fun, easy, and honestly a good way to still make conversation. The last couple of years, I've tried to develop mentors, pastors who are far older than me, far wiser, people that I want to model and imitate. And it's been interesting. One thing I've noticed, some of them pretty well networked. I'll meet them, and next time I meet them, some of them will say, hey, Mark, it's so good to see you again. And then there's others of them, oh, hey, man, it's so good to see you again. You're from Alabama, right? Man, some of these guys are extremely busy. And they say, hey, Mark, how's the church going? And I know this sounds cheesy and cliche, but honestly, it makes me feel valued and of worth and respected. Wow, he remembers my name? I feel special. I feel loved. For us to love our neighbors well, I think the first thing is we just have to learn their names. Last week, no, just a couple of days ago. Walking outside, my car is parked on the street, and I see a guy with his dog. It was a German Shepherd, huge dog, coming, and I can tell, okay, we're going to end up crossing paths here on the sidewalk. And I notice, oh, this is the first guy who greeted me when we were moving in, like literally moving boxes in, and this guy was out walking his German Shepherd, and he was so warm and welcoming to me. This is him. And I recognize him because of the German Shepherd. The German Shepherd, I remembered the dog's name was Tessa because that's our dog's name. So super easy to remember. And so I walk up to him. I didn't know his name. I forgot it. And I did the, hey, man, so good to see you. And so we spent a couple minutes talking superficially. And I was, because of this whole series, I was like, you know what? I need to ask him for his name. I said, hey, man, I'm so embarrassed. But could you just remind me of your name again? He said, hey, yeah, it's Chris. And then he said, you know, I forgot yours too. What's yours? Okay, I feel a little bit better now. So we're talking, talking about his German Shepherd, all this other stuff, his family. And then, I'm not even joking, so embarrassing. This happens to me all the time. 2 minutes into the conversation, I forgot his name again. And I'm like, oh, no. Right? And I was like, okay, man. And say, man, right? I'm so sorry. I'm so embarrassed to say this. I forgot your name again. He's like, it's Chris. I was like, what's your last name? I won't say his last name. Anyways. And I said, can we just become like friends on like Facebook right now or Instagram? It's going to really help me to remember your name. And we did. And now I know his first and last name. We see each other. And here's the difference. It's gone from like, hey, man, how's your dog, Tessa? To, hey, Chris, how's your family doing? And here's the point. We've gone to stranger to acquaintance, from acquaintance to having a relationship. I want us to do a quick exercise this morning. This is about as practical as it gets. Last Sunday, we handed out little neighborhood block maps. We'll put one up on the screen right now. You should have got that last week. Hopefully you got one when you came in this morning. If you didn't, we can get you one. And here's what I want us to do. Here this is. So in the middle is your house. Maybe you live in an apartment, a condo, a dairy farm, whatever. Wherever you live, that's represented right there in the middle. The 8 boxes surrounding it are representing your 8 closest neighbors. Some of us may have one neighbor. If you live in an apartment complex, you're going to have like 35, whatever. The point, though, is who are your 8 closest neighbors? And I know this is redundant, but honestly, we intentionally want it to be redundant because we really believe this is at the heart of Jesus. I'm going to ask us 3 questions. We have a little interaction here, and we're going to see what happens. The first question I want to ask everyone, is there anybody here who can name all 8 of their neighbors? And now I'm not talking last names, just first names, okay? So raise your hand if you can do that. Okay, I think I see 6 hands raised. So these authors, they've done this thousands of times, and we got the same result here. How many people do you think can name 8 of their neighbors? What percentage? It's less than 10. It was less than 10 here. Less than 10% of Americans can name, just first name, 8 of their closest neighbors. Second question, and this is where it gets a little bit more scary. Who here can name just like a personal fact about their neighbor? And I'm not talking like what color car they drive or if they own a dog or a cat, because you can observe those things from far. I'm talking about like a fact about their life, what they do for a living or whatever. Is there anybody in here who can name a personal fact about all of their neighbors? Raise your hand. All 8. Look, we have some saints back here. We have some saints. Statistically, less than 3% of people can do that. 3%. Last question. So really, it's just you two. This is like a contest now. We have a big prize waiting. Can either of you two name a hope, a dream, a hurt, or a fear of your 8 closest neighbors? Oh my gosh, you can? This is amazing. So, and actually, I think this is true here. Only 1% of people can do that. 1%. Now, let me be clear here. Actually, I'm gonna, do we have a picture of my neighborhood map? Okay. Hey, I wanna value vulnerability and transparency here. I did this 5 days ago. This is my neighborhood. I could sit down and name by name 3 of my closest neighbors. Now, there's a couple others that I know. I couldn't remember their names though. So, question marks. It is okay. All of us in here statistically are in the exact same boat. This is not a shame game. We're not here to make you feel bad or guilty. I'm right there with you. But here's what this means. We just want to get practical. We got to start at the basics. If you were here last Sunday, I asked 2 questions. All right, you can take that down. I don't want to feel any more guilty up here. Last Sunday, I asked 2 questions. First one, do you view your neighborhood as your primary place to serve and minister? Do you view your neighborhood as your primary place to serve and minister? Second question was, can you pray for your neighbors? Here's the third question, and the one question I want to ask for us this morning. Could you learn the names of your neighbors? Statistically, less than 10% of people in here can. What if we just learned the first names of our neighbor? Why? Jesus said to love our neighbors. And I think the best and easiest way to start doing that is you can't love someone unless you know their name. For some of our saints back here, what if you learned their hopes, hurts, dreams, fears? If you already know your neighbor's names, or maybe you know 2 of their names, move to the second part. Do you know their hopes, their hurts, their fears, their dreams? Ask yourself that. I want to close us with the passage out of Acts chapter 17. We'll put it up on the screen. Acts chapter 17. This is a fascinating 2 verses. The Apostle Paul has started many churches in the ancient world. And at this time, he happens to be in Athens. So he's talking to a bunch of kind of Greek people. He's up on a hill. You can go and visit today. It's still there. Here's what Paul says, Acts chapter 17, verses 26 through 27. From one man, God, he made all the nations that they should inhabit the whole earth. And here it is. He marked out their appointed times in history and the boundaries of their lands. Why? God did this so that they would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he is not far from any one of us. Here's what this passage means in English. God put you in your neighborhood for a reason. And not only did God put you in your neighborhood, but he put your neighbors in that neighborhood for the same reason. Why? Verse 27, so that they may find God. I mean, you have a neighbor maybe who's just lonely and just craving life, or just their husband just had a fatal car accident and they are just groping for God. They're trying to find life. And you know what? You could be the neighbor to walk alongside them to find Jesus Christ. Here's something that will spin our worlds according to this passage. We don't live in our neighborhood for the reason we think. So some of us live in our neighborhood. We picked our house because we like the floor plan. We picked our house because we like the school district zoning. We picked our house because we like the pool and the patio and all that kind of stuff in the nice backyard. It's nice. You know what Paul says here? That's not why you live in your neighborhood. You live in your neighborhood because God put you there so that your neighbors might reach out to him and you could play a role in that. If we take this seriously, this will change the way that literally you drive into your house. This will change the way that you view your neighbor. And let me say this. We're busy. Our neighbors are busy. Are there going to be people who aren't going to want to talk to you, who could give a rip about giving you the time of day? Absolutely. That's true. and that's okay. Because there just may be one of your neighbors who's longing to experience Jesus. And that's why you're there.